Mr. Dice brings over 40 years of experience in construction, telecom, hardware, software development. And in 1999, he founded BizWatt 1.0, a pioneering cloud company. 9 years ago, while working in the fiber optic and commercial solar construction, he identified the need for specialized software in the construction industries, particularly for surveyors. This led to the development of Q-Factor for land surveyors, released 7 years ago, which has gained a loyal base of survey companies. Mr. Dice is engaged in over 100 surveyors, ranging from sole proprietors to CEOs, through demonstrations, discussions, and participation in regional survey conferences. This has given him a comprehensive understanding of surveyors' pain points in managing and determining project profitability. Prevalent inefficiencies in the surveyor's workflow processes stems from the using project management applications that do not align with the industry's requirements, despite having access to cutting-edge technology in the field. Misalignment causes wasted time, excessive work in progress, team confusion, creating bottlenecks in the industry where there is more work than there is for people to do it. I love that. Fred, as we've talked about the last time you were on, we've been using your stuff for the last over 5 years. So we're pretty ingrained with Q-Factor. So it's been a great product for us, and from the project management side. So I love it. I will chime in as I can, but I'll let you run off on your presentation first.
All right. Well, thank you very much from the intro.
Of course.
Thanks for inviting me to speak on the topic.
Yep.
And thanks for everybody attending. The power of time management, the unbearable lightness of being organized. And this comes from the fruition of, well, actually, we were at the show in Reno last March. And for years, time is such a big issue for surveyors. And so much so that they don't have time to save time to make more time to get stuff done. And I've had surveyors contact me, one in New Hampshire every winter, when things are slow, and okay, I got to get organized. I got to get on the system, but he doesn't have the time. And he ends up going away, and then he gets busy, and then the next year comes along. So it's a very timely topic. And so I'll go into it. And I'm going to start out with a clip from a movie called The Founder, about McDonald's and the founding of McDonald's. I consider myself a systems engineer. I worked at McDonald's when I turned 15 and a half, got my work permit, and started flipping burgers. But I learned so much about efficiency, time management, everything that we're going to talk about here. So without further ado, let me launch into this.
You're going to love how we did it. You got a tennis court. Okay, he brings me up to this tennis court, and he's drawn this line, the exact dimensions of our kitchen.
Sink on the right, extruder on the left, bagging and hood. Okay, garnish. This is burger pinch, got it, and then this is burger slide. We could just move those. Okay. Multi-mix your soft drinks. Okay.
We bring out our whole staff, and we have them go through the motions, making pretend burgers and fries.
All right, Steve, anticipate that. You gotta keep the tray level. Okay.
Dick is running around with this stick, marking where all the equipment should be.
Tuck in. Tony, are you gonna skip the pickles when we're really doing it?
They do it over and over, hashing it out, choreographing it like some crazy burger.
What's going on over there? Yes. No.
Anybody feel this?
Garnish too. You've got pickles, you've got onions. It's a goddamn hamburger. Come on. Let's clear it off. Time for the paint off. And then rip your orange. See all this open space here now? We've rearranged the fry situation. So now the stage left, the deep fryer stage right. Again, that's great. Come on, guys.
We're pretty tied up here.
Yeah, watch it. It's the timing. It's the Lazy Susan. Those are finished burgers. You can't hold it. I still think there's a third version.
What do you want to move?
I want to move everything. Back to stage left, please.
So I'll cut it there because I feel like that gets the point across. And this is kind of looking at, you know, this surveying projects, how you're operating your business. And when I worked there, the brilliance of it is I could stand at the grill, and without moving more than a 3-foot radius, I could crank out 48 hamburgers perfectly processed and ready to go. And it was efficiency of motion and efficiency of time. And that's the brilliance of McDonald's. And that's how they went from 15 million when they first did this to 100 million in 3 years. So it works, and it's a symphony of efficiency. That's a quote from Mac McDonald, a symphony of efficiency. So time management is a big part of getting there, of being the conductor in the orchestra and getting that symphony. And to really do well at time management, it requires discipline on your part and your team's part, delegation. I have a hard time delegation. I just hired an employee this morning to help onboard clients. And I was getting things set up, and I started doing the things that I hired her to do. Instead of saying, here, go do this, because she's competent and capable, she was hired. And it took me that bit of, let it go. So delegation, training. You've got to train people. When I started at McDonald's, we sat in the basement with a VCR, and they had a VHS tape for every station in a McDonald's. You sat there, you watched it, you maybe watched it twice. Then a mentor, mentoring Mondays, a mentor, an older crew member who knew how to do this, then took you upstairs and mentored you through that station until they felt you were competent to do it on your own. Training. It takes time, it takes effort, but not doing it, it takes a lot more time and effort, honestly. So training is very important. And then standard operating procedures. That's kind of where we end up there, but that's where we should start, is how does your business run? Do you have written instructions for how your business is run? Do you have checklists for what a standard boundary survey should look like from your company? And all this is time management that gets you to be more efficient so that these things feed into it. And I put the logo up here because, as mentioned, I started this company in 1999. I meant for it to be an overall project management tool then that was going to be delivered in the cloud. And the tagline there, because work is power over time, is a play on Ohm's law. But even then, we intended to build something that would give you power over your time and make work more efficient and better. So discipline. We got a lot of things going on. We got a lot of devices beeping at us. We got things alerting us, monitoring us. You got people like Trent that are flying all over the place. I mean, we got a lot going on, and sometimes it's really important to just tune out, take a step back, and look at what really means the most to you, what's the most important, and then decide that without distractions, you're going to focus on those priorities. And the way that I've had to do it with my life is it urgent and is it important? And that goes to the top of the heap. And unfortunately, a lot of our lives, everything's urgent and important. And then it gets to be hard to figure out which one's first. And sometimes it's who's screaming loudest. But discipline to take the time to figure out what is important, and also taking the time to tune out. The gentleman in New Hampshire, when he demoed a couple months ago, and we talked about his time and efficiency and all that, and I said, what are you giving up by not being efficient? He goes, man, I used to put 150 to 200 miles a week on my bike. I haven't done it for 4 years. And I said, you got a spare tire? And he goes, oh, I got a couple. So our goal when we finally get him, and he is going to start with us, he's just waiting, but our goal is to get him back on his bike. And the only way to do that is to be more efficient, because you can't stop your jobs, you can't not deliver, but by being more efficient and having discipline, you now have the time to do those other things. So delegate. General George S. Patton, I went to the Air Force Academy after high school, and we were required to memorize quotes from famous generals and leaders. This one stuck with me. Never tell people how to do things, tell them what to do, and they will surprise you with their ingenuity. That's delegation. We all want to be innovative, think different. We all want to do it ourselves, but we also hire people with certain competencies that we trust, or we should be hiring people with certain competencies that we trust. And delegation means trust. You hired somebody to do something, let them go do it. And if they make a mistake, take corrective action. If they do it well, commend them, train them, support them, but delegate. There's so many things I end up doing that I'm hiring interns now from my high school to help do stuff that I just need to offload. But that's delegation, and it comes with training. And when General George S. Patton says that, I'm not going to argue with him. So delegate your workload is a key element to time management. Ask yourself if what you're doing would be better suited for another team member. Are you working in your wheelhouse? Is that your core competency? Is that the value you bring to your company? Training. So I'll do another promotional plug here. This is a postcard we did for the conference in Reno, and the theme of which was the greatest show. And so we took that, and I think this kind of encapsulates a lot of things where, you know, your business can be like a 3-ring circus at times, and you're the ringmaster. And training, you know, they train, everybody in the circus gets trained, so the trapeze works right, everything works right, and that takes training. And you're the ringmaster of your domain, whatever that may be. Standard operating procedures are extremely important. Pilots never get in an airplane until they've gone through a checklist. And you know, back to the attention to detail, there are about 5 different checklists that a pilot goes through in the course of prior to takeoff and after landing. And they, no matter how many thousands of hours they have, they don't ignore the checklist. You miss one thing, you don't land right. You have a landing you don't walk away from. So having operating procedures, excuse me, is really important, and they don't have to be complicated. It just has to be something that people can point to and say, this is the way we do this service. This is the way we do this thing. And that way, everybody in the company, whether it's one person or 50 people, can point to that document and say, this is how we do it. Any questions outside of that, bring them to me. And back to the McDonald's, there was what we called the Bible that was up on the manager's desk. That book had everything in it you could ever need to completely run a McDonald's, all the way down to, if the HVAC goes out, here's your troubleshooting. Because if that lobby gets hot, customers are leaving and you're not making money. So they trained us managers how to troubleshoot mechanical stuff in the company, and it was in that book. It was a standard operating manual. Go with a little brevity here.
Roger. Huh?
LA departure frequency 123.9er.
Roger. Huh? Request vector over. What?
Flight 209er clear for vector 324.
We have clearance, Clarence. Roger, Roger. What's our vector, Victor?
Our radio clearance over.
So sometimes it can feel like that, even if you're a pilot, but they were communicating. So standard operating procedures, what we can really get out of it is starting off with training. New employees, if you've got a new employee and they're coming in and you want them to sit down and do something, having a checklist, having what they need to do laid out really helps with training. And you still go over it with them in person, but they have something they can refer back to remind them. Organization of your company, who does what? I mean, that's part of operating procedures, is who has what responsibilities. Consistency is huge. Oops, sorry. Quality of the output that you have, the consistency of your surveys, especially if you have repeat customers. You want documents to look the same. You want the information to look the same. You want the consistency because that's what your customer comes to expect. And with consistency, you can constantly bring up the quality. And that's where we get into quality control. Procedures can be changed. They can start out with just 3 steps. And then over time, we build it as we learn and as we go. They're not set in stone. Procedures change, things change, requirements change. But if you have that original document you're changing, you have something to refer to. And delegation, when you delegate a task, again, is there a procedure that somebody can follow so they know what they're being asked to do? You get motivated employees when they get all these things. When you support them through training, when you give them documentation, when you train them how to do things, they're more motivated to get the job done, which then boosts productivity. One thing I've learned from several companies that I've worked for where they took care of the employees. And there's a gentleman here today whose company I was at their party at, and he exemplifies building a company where the employees are motivated because they're taken care of, and that boosts productivity. I've worked at companies like Qualcomm who went through heavy growth during their IPO, and because they took care of the employees, trained them, motivated them and everything, when stress became, very high, the stress was because we were busy, but we knew we were supported and we produced. And then excellence. I mean, you want to produce the best quality product that you can for your customer. And operating procedures help you do that. And KISS. Keep it simple, surveyor. These procedures don't have to be long thought out things where you're spending weekends with 10 people in a room. Just start with what do we do today and build the list and then start adding to it as you go. And then you'll run into that one thing you forget every 10 times. We'll add it to the list so you don't forget it. It's easier to delete something than it is to remember to do it. And that again comes back to, all the benefits of working on your time management and understanding what you're doing with the company and everybody in the company understanding it. And this was, I wanted to get through this, so if there's any Q&A, but I need to do some acknowledgements here, or I should. Landon Blake, who's, I think a lot of you know who he is, his Mentoring Monday, week 59, influenced a lot of what this topic is about, because he spoke to it from a surveyor's point of view. I'm speaking to it from a systems engineer's point of view, but his video is well worth watching. He goes over a lot of good reasons why you should be doing the standard operating procedures. And I think between he and Trent and Mentoring Mondays, there was, some idea of doing some kind of crowdsourcing of procedures. In fact, at one time, Landon published the procedures he'd written so other surveyors could use them. There's no reason why we can't share this amongst us. If this is how you do a standard boundary survey, great, give me a good starting point, especially for a beginning surveyor, somebody who's breaking out on their own and starting out. If they could get into a library of procedures that gives them a good idea of what they're up against and what they need to do, they're off to a great running start. So the Mentoring Mondays concept, the geoholics, and the mentoring, it's crowdsourcing basically. I mean, my understanding of the industry, for years, a lot of surveyors were very regionalized, isolated, because of the nature of technology and what's done. But now here we are in a webinar with people from all over the country, hopefully here, and we're able to communicate and share ideas and bring up the industry. There's a lot going on here, and working as an industry can help improve it for everybody in it. As they say, a rising tide lifts all boats. And then John Rogers, I don't know how many of you know John, but I met him recently, and he also helped influence what this topic was about and what the presentation was about. He's a 40-year surveyor, and he and I are, when Trent offered the opportunity to do this presentation, I asked John, I said, if you had an opportunity to do a presentation and I was your megaphone, what would it be? And that's where we hit on the time management and the need for mentoring, the need for organization, and the need for improving things. And then finally, Trent, as you said early on, he's been a client, he's a friend. He's been a big proponent of what we're doing here. And he, again, by example, influences the fact that, you know, our company, even though we're not surveyors and we're selling a product, we support way more than just selling our product. We're supporting the industry. And that really comes from the example set by Trent. And there's, you know, getting kids into survey. And along those lines, I guess I'm done with the presentation, but I just want to say with the Get Kids into Survey, the Mentoring Mondays, and I'm now at Vandenberg Space Force Base, back where I grew up. And I'm back at my high school. And so I found out that our county has a internship program, a beautiful one, where 10th graders, they put the kids through an 8-week class, they get them qualified, and then they look for mentoring opportunities and internship opportunities for these kids. So I've taken that, married it with Get Kids into Survey, and we're working, and I've got a couple clients in my county who I'm kind of leaning on to, you're going to hire some interns this summer, aren't you? And you're going to do it through this county program, and you're going to support Kids into Survey, aren't you? And I think they'll come along. But here's an example of where I did some mock interviews for these kids that did the class this year, and I found 2 potential surveyors, smart, technology, and they work with their hands. And to me, at that age, if somebody told me about surveying, I don't know, I would have looked at it a lot more than I would have drywalling and tenant improvement work. But the point being that here are these 10th graders, and I'm now going to hire them and introduce them to this market. And that is part of what this industry really needs and what Trent and Get Kids into Survey is about. So with that, that's the end of the presentation. Any questions?
I threw in the chat. Okay, so Nick, I'm going to throw in the Dropbox. I have all of those files that you were just talking. They were in the Dropbox from Landon's week 59 when we got all those files. So those are now in the in the chat as well. So anybody that needs to grab those.
Oh, okay, I see those.
Yep. And then I also threw in the link there. So well, let's see. I mean, you still have quite a bit of time.
I did go through it fast, but
yeah,
I also,
you did. You did go through fast.
Well,
go ahead. Oh, George got it. George will get it started.
Okay, I have to agree with one of your earlier comments that you gave about delegation, about giving someone something to do and then watching how they do it, because a lot of times you learn that way. If you don't learn anything else, you learn about the confidence that you had in this person in the first place was well placed, number one. And number two, oftentimes you come up with a better way of doing what you're trying to get accomplished. So if you just give them a project and say, hey, here's the location, you need to do this research, whatever, and here's what we need to end up with for a product. I don't care how you get there as long as it's right in the end. Works really well. At least it did for me.
Yeah.
and you bring up a point that was made in the McDonald's video when Nick Offerman's character, I think he was Bob McDonald, and he said, no, I see there's a third option here. And in my experience with systems engineering and doing process improvement, you start the first time and that's your beta test. And then you look at, okay, now how can we improve that? And that's your second iteration of it. And his comment on the third is somewhat of a standard that by the third iteration, you should have it pretty well defined. And if you don't, then you go to a fourth iteration. But the idea is that you start off with something and then, as you were saying, and then improve upon it, and then improve upon it. So good point.
The other suggestion that I had for my client, for my staff was, my door is always open for questions. If you have a problem with this project, something comes up that's unexpected, or you don't quite know how to deal with it, that's fine. That's to be expected. If you have a project that doesn't happen on, there's something wrong with the project, at least in my experience, because it's pretty rare. So I said, come with the question, but also come with 2 or 3 solutions that you would like to apply to the problem. I'll learn how you're thinking. You'll learn what I think is the right way to do, the best way to do it. Maybe there's not a right way. But oftentimes I learned another way to do it too. So it's a win-win situation for everyone involved. And it just pays huge dividends.
That's another excellent point. Don't just bring me a problem, bring me a couple of solutions and we can discuss them. Let me know you're thinking about a solution, not just reaching out.
Yeah, exactly. It's perfect. I guess let's go through your slide maybe a little bit, kind of talk about maybe just a little more talking points on each one of them as you kind of went through there.
Yeah, I did. Sorry, I did go through fast. It's been a busy
okay.
day. And
Yeah, no, you're good. And we can always end it. We can always end it whenever you're good too, as well. But I was just thinking, yeah.
Let's see. So I think the the checklist, the task list are, yeah, it's just kind of rehashing all that.
Well, I mean, from the last time you were on, I think.
Well, do you want me to go into what we've done, or
yeah,
I don't?
Yeah, I think you should just at least hit on a little bit more of Q factor. Obviously, more things that you've added since the last time you were on. So.
All right. Well, nobody minds. I'll show some of the ways that.
Yeah. No, I think
that we've addressed this. Let me get logged in here real quick.
Yep. Yeah, I think it'd be some good background to at least to the main presentation too, to show what you're doing to, like how you started it. You're trying to get him to be able to ride his bike more again, and how
right
how are you gonna do that? So
so
there you go.
So in the systems engineering and process engineering, this is one place that we like to start here. And so down along the bottom, kind of hard to see because there's a lot of them. Those are statuses that a project can be in at any time in its life cycle. And over to the left, this is where the first phone call comes in asking for service. So you've got to start tracking the process at the proposal stage. That's your lifeblood. And if you're closing 30 or 40% of your proposals, then you need to be doing, 100 to get 30 projects. And so tracking that process is very important all the way through the life cycle of the project to invoiced, hopefully not past due, and then eventually paid and archived. And then organization of the project. So a project map showing where everything is and, geographically. And so this gives you greater organization to see where projects are and then their statuses. And then I'll just go ahead and jump into the projects checklist. So I'll bring up the project that we have set up here. And so here is a checklist, a task list, as we call it, just to differentiate it a bit, because it's more than just checks, it's task. People need to upload documents. I'll go ahead and start with this one here. So this is the status that the project is in, proposal research and prep. And this is everything that I want the person who's doing this status to do before they hand it off to me for estimate. So I need you to do some research. I need you to upload a deed. I need you to check on the project contacts. Who are we doing this for? What's their phone numbers, email addresses? Get as much information, especially on that first phone call. That's the best opportunity you have to get information out of the person that wants your service. And that's when the person taking that call needs to have the discipline to go through the checklist and ask the questions, because to follow up on it is going to add days to turning around your proposal. And the best thing you can do is turn this thing around quickly while the customer's got their wallet out. So this gives you the checklist of what you want done. And when it's completed, so I'll just go ahead and complete these here. Oh, I need to edit. All right. Sorry, I'm not sure.
You got too many characters in there.
I may be. It's a demo. Somebody.
Exactly.
Well, short of that. Oh, there we go. I think that did it. All right, sorry, I'm flustering this. I'll just go back to here and show what happened. So if I have the project in. Sorry, I wasn't quite prepared to do this.
I'm sorry.
There we go.
You're
So now that I have my checklist and the employee's done everything they want on it, then I can tell them through what we've set up here, I can tell them what the next status it needs to go to is. And so in this case, when the special research is done, then we want to move the status to right-of-way research. And then we would come back to. I guess we don't have any tasks for that. So that's the end of that project, is once it gets into there. But the idea being that now the employee knows, or whoever's working on this knows what needs to be done, and when it's done, they know what status to send it off to. And then the system is built with notifications. So there are quite a few ways of notifying people of what's going on. So you don't have to email them, you don't have to tell them. And again, these are efficiencies. So everything that we're doing here is trying to eliminate steps and trying to eliminate confusion and improve communications between people. And this is how you start driving towards efficiencies. And as you go through this and you say, oh, we need to remember to do this next time we do a proposal. So I can come in here, we'll add a task. Remember this. I can assign it to somebody. And I love doing this on demos, because I'll assign somebody that's on the demo a task and their phone will go ping. And that's kind of what you're looking for, is I got assigned something, I need to know about it. And when I save this, that email will let that person know what they were assigned to do, when it was due, and a link back to the project. And now in one step, I did something that may otherwise take you 15 minutes to do. And then is that person going to remember? Well, guess what? They get the email notification that it's due, that they've been assigned it, and then they get a notification the day it's due that it's due that day. And the big thing is managing tasks, and it's very complicated to do. And a lot of clients are trying Trello, they're trying different applications, much to their credit. The challenge is they're not all in one system. And in this case, what we do is we talk to different applications that do really good things, like QuickBooks on accounting and QuickBooks Time. In fact, I should probably talk about the QuickBooks Time thing and what happened at the conference. That would be a good one. But the point being that you don't want to have the application start managing you, nor do you want to have to totally manage your applications. You want them to work for you. And a lot of times a lot of companies, they'll go down this path and they'll get sold a solution, and then they become a slave to it. They can't adapt to it. They don't get what they need out of it. And 2 years later, they're switching systems. And I've seen the cycle. I've been in sales for this kind of stuff, and I see the cycle. And sometimes it comes back to the wrong application. Other times, and in case I have this issue with onboarding clients, an unwillingness to change the way things are being done. And that's an issue, because I've got a client who insists this is the way they want to do it. They don't want to adjust to what the tool does. And it's like, I can't help you there. You know, this is the way it's built. This is the way other people do it. Change is a tough one. Change management is a very big challenge, and why a lot of people don't look for tools like these. And rightfully so, because there are some tools that take you 3 months and 4 people and all kinds of confusion and a lot of work while you've got business going. You know, and here's the idea of, hey, we want to save time, not spend 4 months getting to something we're not sure we're going to get to. So picking the right tools that meet your needs, but also I almost demand owner buy-in, owner participation in when we're doing the onboarding, because if you're the owner of the company and you've got these tools that your people are using and you don't know how to use them, how do you know you're getting the best results out of the tools that you can be? And if with an easier tool, it's much easier to become the subject matter expert and know what needs to be done. And I'm working with a group of 2 surveyors who bought out a retiring surveyor, and they're trying to, we were helping them prior to the transition, and we're helping them through the transition. And we're doing Saturday 2 hours where they're in the office, phones off, nobody around, and it's just the 3 of us going into dialing in their process of procedures and what they're doing. And one of the aha moments that came out of it was they didn't quite get simply back to QuickBooks, back to timesheets. A lot of surveyors are still doing paper. You got employees putting stuff on paper. Somebody types it into Excel or types it into QuickBooks or something. But there's a lot of stuff going on there that is so simplified by a cheap application called QuickBooks Time. Shouldn't say cheap, inexpensive. It's a great application. And when I was at the conference in Reno, a gentleman, again, who's talked to me for the last 3 years about getting started, said, okay, we're going to go to breakfast, we're going to talk. And at breakfast, his son was there, who was a young surveyor. I think he just got licensed. Is that right? Do you remember, Trent?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he just got licensed. His dad's a surveyor, family business. I think the son's working for someone else right now, but there's the family business. And we're at breakfast and we're talking about the loss of time. And here's a father-son, and we got to a point where the son said, hey, I used to get up in the middle of the night, my dad's at the table working. And there was a sense of lost time there. And as we were talking about what John does with his Saturdays, and he's doing time entry, he's taking the paper time entries, and he's doing all the things I just described. And I said, how long does that take you every Saturday? 8 hours. T-sheets cost you $10 a month, $6 per employee, and it will eliminate that 8 hours and give you so much more power and control over what your business is doing. Now, what are you going to do with that 8 hours? And that's per Saturday. That's 32 hours a week times 52. One of the analogies I like to use, having built things myself, some things that go for a long run, you build a wall. You're doing measurements. And if you're on a short run and you're off by just a little bit, which we don't want to be, but if you're off by a little bit over 10 feet, that may be 1/8 of an inch. But you protract that out over 100 feet, and that degree off is not acceptable at all. And it's much bigger than it seems when it's just at 10 feet. So the changes that you make now, the efficiencies that you make now, protract out over the next year to suddenly you're on top of the game. Suddenly you're out on your bike, or you're playing golf, or you're doing whatever it is that you do outside of work. And family is the big one. But there's other things that we need to do too. There's family, there's work, and then you got to have hobbies. That's how you be a well-rounded person, and you got to have the time to do it and the discipline. So saving that time, 8 hours, and that wasn't even our product. That was somebody else's product. but it saved him 8 hours, and it saved other clients of ours time and money and more efficiency. And so back to the guys that bought the survey company, we were having this very conversation, and they kept wanting to push things down to their employees to do and then report back to them on. And I said, why are you doing that? And they said, well, because that's how we know to do it. And I said, well, with these new tools, you don't need to ask for reporting because it's pretty automatic. You don't have to ask for reports anymore. That's why these tools are built the way they are. So I can do something like this. So I need to know, I'm the owner of the company. I log in here and right away I can see all the past due tasks. I don't have to ask anybody where they're at on anything. If they're keeping their information updated, this is delegation now and training. Push the information and the task down to the person that needs to be doing it, and have a system that reports back to you when it's done or not done. And in this case, I can see all the red ones. Guess what those mean? They're past due, and they're a threat to my company. They're a threat to profitability. They're a threat to the project getting done. And those are the things that we want to manage by. It's great if you got your task done. That's what we paid you for. It's the ones that aren't done that are going to hurt us. And now, you know, with a system like this or other systems that are built in a similar way, I can filter down to what's not completed, and then I can filter down to an individual. Let's pick on someone else that might have more work. Oh, well. The point being that now I can manage by exception very easily without asking for a report, without asking for an employee where they are. And if one of these tasks is done and they didn't mark it done, then I take corrective action and say, hey, you completed this, you need to mark it done. And oh, by the way, when they mark it done, it gets time stamped. We know who completed it and when, and their name. So now you've got accountability, trackability, and it's so easy to do. And it makes the system so much easier to manage. So when I was talking to Anthony and Garth, his partner, they had that aha moment of, oh, this is so much easier now. I don't need to push all of this down and have reports coming back to me because I have the tools that bring the information to me. What else were you touching upon there, Trent?
No, I think those are good. Those were good. Definitely the task list, obviously, like we talked about, that's different than from the last presentation. So those are all new, and the calendars that you're being able to do.
Yeah, the calendar
notifications. Yep.
With that, there's also a project calendar. So we can put in milestone dates for the projects and then filter down, including crew visit dates.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have this populated, but
I was just going to say, assuming there's information in
there
that
we go.
There you go. Yep.
There was one in the demo, but the idea being that now you've got, as long as people are putting the data in the system correctly, then now it shows up to you as the owner, the project manager, the office manager, the accountant, whomever, front desk person. They can see where things are at. And I guess that might touch on another interesting point, that when we started this, we had a surveyor in our hometown who we happened to be friends with the CFO. And as we were building this out, they invited us in to learn their processes and procedures and actually do an analysis from proposal to finished, archived, and paid. And that is where we learned a lot of what and this was ended up being a target market client, but 25-person survey company, 35 years old. And we learned what they needed, and the end result was a lot of this product. But when I went in and met Mike, his first complaint was nothing to do with project management, really. It had to do with the fact that their accountant was in 2 days a week in the morning, and if somebody called and wanted their drawings, nobody knew if the invoice had been paid because nobody had access to QuickBooks but the accountant, who's in 2 days a week, Tuesday, Thursday. So in between those times, they don't have information out of their accounting system. And there's multiple ways of going around that. But as Trent said, this was born out of me working with a fiber optic construction company and also a commercial solar company, and doing project profitability and getting information out of QuickBooks. The bottleneck that causes, if a PM has to go to an accountant and say, did you do the invoice? Well, I didn't know you wanted me to do it. And, you know, those kinds of things are confusion, and they cost you time and money. And so what I figured out was this one company, the solar company, they had 90 logins to QuickBooks, and they were 60 of those were project managers, all kinds of different people who were not accounting people, not financial people, and they were given read only. But the reason was that they thought it was going to cut down on bothering the accountants. Well, it didn't improve anything. And what we did was we said, okay, what information does a project manager really need from accounting about their projects? And that would be invoicing and where are we at on time entries. And again, when these things get put into a system where they're readily available, one, because we're using T-sheets, the clients are using T-sheets, I can come in here at any time and see all the hours that were put against this project without asking anybody for a report. And I can get down into the detail of what was done here. This then carries over into a profitability report. Again, sorry, this doesn't look that great, but it gets the point across. So this is a demo, other people come in here and do stuff. But the point being that we're using uniform information, using QuickBooks as a source of truth, which then carries over to T-sheets, which then carries over to this. So anytime we're talking about a one-person field survey crew, everybody in the company understands what that is. In this profitability, we have a column for what was estimated. So we do have an estimator built into here. And then what was actually put against the project. And this is what I used to get paid to generate reports over 100 commercial solar projects. I'd have to dump all the data from about 10 different applications, bring it all together, and 2 weeks later, I could produce a report telling them where their projects were at 2 weeks ago. And in the meantime, Hawaii had a hurricane that wiped out your inventory of solar panels on the island. So it's not quite as profitable as it looked 2 weeks ago. In fact, it's not even a project anymore. But that delay in getting that information and the complication to get it is what I sought to reduce and make efficient. And that came out in this profitability report. And it's near real time. When an employee puts time in against it and hits save, it shows up in Q Factor, and you know that hour, that day. And now you can see, you know, right here, we said 49 hours, we're at 15, we're under, so that's good, but is that really good? Should we be getting some more done there to stay on time? In the case here, we got 28 hours we didn't estimate. So now as a PM, I can dive in and go, well, did somebody put time against the wrong project? Oh, yeah, okay, this guy always does that. He confuses the project. So now you know, go in, rekey the work. And this is long before it gets to accounting for invoicing and timesheets and payroll. You're on it daily, which makes updating, you don't have to update projects because you're on them daily.
George's got a question there.
Sure, sorry.
No, you're good.
One of the biggest things I've seen in my career is most firms have a requirement for field personnel to fill out a weekly timesheet. And it's crazy because you're 5 days behind all the time. And
right.
It's nuts. And it's so much easier to do it on a daily basis. Now, for 40 years, I kept a diary of what I did on paper. But I also now, over the last 10 years or so, actually longer than that, did a daily timesheet entry. And it's so much easier because you don't have to think about what you did 5 days ago. You know what you did that day. It's right there in your head. You can put it down, you're gonna put it in the right doggone place. And then accounting has that information, the project manager has that information. Is exactly your point. You can see where you are on the project. You can see if you're going down the drain, or if there's a problem that needs to be addressed with the client, you can communicate with that client and deal with the problem. And it's so much easier to do that on a timely basis than to go a week and say, oh, we ran into a problem here. It's going to take us another 2 weeks to get this accomplished because we're waiting on information from somebody else that we can't get. It's just so much better to do it on a daily basis.
Yep. Another excellent point. And that's something we emphasize is, and this is where the owners and the managers have to get involved, is get the employees to enter their time as they roll off the project. I mean, if they're field people, it's on the phone. It's so dang easy. I mean, it takes literally less than a minute to log your time, and you can spend most of that time putting in really good notes, detailed notes about what you did. Sure, you were out there as a 2-person field survey crew, but use the note field and tell us what you did, or, you know, inform us a little bit more. Less than a minute. And there's no reason rolling off the job or at the end of the day. I'm rolling off the job because, to your point, George, even 2 hours later, I can forget it. Did I do an hour or 2 hours on that project? It's so simple now. It's not filling out a long timesheet that somebody's got to go do something with. It's logging into your phone, going into the project, picking what you did and entering your time. Done. And as you said, George, project management now has it. Accounting now has it. It's ready for payroll. And then you have the opportunity to approve that time, which is where I recommend the owner and the project manager every day. That which gets measured gets done. And if your employees know that you're going in and approving the time, say you tell them by 5 it needs to be done, and by 7 you can easily go in and approve that time. Do you do that, Trent, or does somebody else do that for you guys?
We don't do the time approvals.
Okay.
Yeah, they just clock in and out through the system. Yeah.
So proving that time, one, if they haven't entered their time, they get an email or a text from you saying, hey, you're supposed to have your time in by the close of business. Please get it done. They know you're watching and they respect that, and they will get it done as long as they know you're checking it. And then you need to have the same discipline too. I always recommend the owners, the principals, people who are on salary. Your time impacts projects a lot more than another employee because you cost a lot more. And if you're not working on something billable, you know, if you're billing your time out over, you know, 180, 200 bucks an hour, and you're doing something that's not billable and it's on a project, well, you still have a cost. And you have a lost opportunity cost. So tracking that time to know where it's going as the owners or principals, I highly recommend. That kind of comes back to the discipline. As soon as you start to see, wow, did I really spend 6 hours on that? You know, did I really go down a rabbit hole? I should have done it in 4. And to that point, one of the field guys on Trent's crew, they told me that they appreciate having the estimates there available for them to see, because they can then go in and see what the estimator said and said, hey, you know, 10 hours, 2 field survey guys, or 8 hours, we'll make it 1 day. That surveyor now knows the expectation is 8 hours. So it gives them something to work towards and know. Now you've set an expectation, they can see it and they know what is needed of them. And if they hit hour 7 and they think it's going to go longer, they can communicate with you and say, hey, here's where we're at. What do you want us to do? We're almost at our budget time. You know, now you're communicating, you're setting expectations, and that's another benefit of all this, is setting proper expectations for everybody.
Communication is key. George got another one. Go for it, George.
All right.
Okay, in line with what you just said, owners, principals, and project managers need to have clear, defined percentages of their time that should be considered chargeable. Most of us, when we're in those positions, work way more than 40, 50 hours a week, more like 60, 70. in a lot of cases. But you still need to maintain a chargeable rate of maybe 75, 80, 90%. Sometimes I was lucky, I managed to be 90, 95% chargeable most of the time. But it's because I had a lot of small projects and I could spread my time out pretty easily. And I had good staff. But everybody should have a requirement to be have a certain chargeability rate.
Yep, agreed. And
Fred,
to the point,
go ahead.
you have
I was
something?
gonna say, do you have a sample of the time? Are you able to pull up any of QuickBooks time to show anybody the interface of that?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Let me get logged in.
I know those are always a lot of the questions, even on some of the Facebook chat groups as well. People asking,
Right.
you know,
And while
who's doing time? What are you guys using for time tracking and that kind of stuff? So,
right. And to the timesheet and the tracking your overhead is so critical because that's where there's not a lot of visibility in how your business is running. And one of my early clients, probably 5 years ago, we got him on, we got his team onto QuickBooks Time, and their CAD guy was very, very detailed about entering his time. And what we found out after 3 months, well, first off, when we got set up on the system, the uncompensated wife of the owner no longer had to come in and do all the accounting and general administration stuff she was doing, and that improved the marriage. But when she left, there was nobody there to answer the phone. And what was happening was the CAD person, who was always in the office working on the computer, would answer the phone. And every time he did it, he would mark at least 15 minutes of a phone call. He would log out of what he was doing, log into the phone call. And at the end of 3 months, we came to realize, because there was nobody there, they were losing about $8,000 a month in billable time. And then when we could point to that number, it was much easier for the owner to go, wow, I can hire a general manager at that rate. You know, if they had the work, it wasn't a lack of work. It was that person was not billing their time because they were doing overhead things. And by tracking that overhead, what we ended up doing was saying, you know what, not only can you hire a general manager, you can hire somebody, you know, $4,000 a month instead of $3,000 a month, get a higher caliber person, and you're still, you know, cash flow wise, you're still ahead because now your CAD person's billing time. And so tracking that overhead and knowing where it goes, we caught a guy who was padding his time clock with an hour and a half of setting up the truck every morning. Well, no, that's a half-hour task, dude. So they took some corrective action, but there was an hour and a half that was bleeding out of there every day because nobody paid attention to how he was putting his time. And so that overhead time, tracking that time, you don't have to be anal retentive, you just have to have them be anal retentive, and it's easy to do. So back to the QuickBooks Time. So this is, so here's what the time entries look like on a you know, general scale. So we get a calendar, we get to see who the employees were, what they did, how much time they put into it, who the client was, and how the information was put into the system. So some people were doing it from their phones, other people where somebody may not use a phone or want to do this, an admin person can enter their time for them and still get it done, but at least it's eliminating certain steps. Then we can go into a manual time card. So this is the admin view, and unfortunately I can't do the, I can't do the cell phone view here, I don't think, or I can't, but here's what it looks like for an admin person to enter the time for an employee, or for themselves even, because your employees can enter through this interface as well. So I'm going to put 4 hours on Monday to this project. And it was 1-person field survey crew. It is billable. Let's keep it simple, staking. Save. Done. And I can come in here, 4 hours, same project. I did CAD work. I did forensic surveying, research. So done. And then I can come down here, pick another customer, enter time, do my thing. Now I get notified this employee is over 8 hours. California, they're going to be all over you. But the point being, this is how simple it is. And on the phone, it's probably even easier. It's not a big deal. And that's something that we're realizing here. So many people rightfully picture changing over to these types of systems to be a real pain. And as I said, rightfully so. Once they see this, it's like, oh my gosh, is it really that easy? When they had this big monster in their head of this is going to take forever, it's going to kill us, you know, no, it's this easy. And I guess, you know, part of our offering is not just our tools. We support QuickBooks, we support T-Sheets, we support clients who have other applications. Right now, expense is coming up. And so we're looking how we can pull in a third-party application called Expensify to handle expenses. We're not going to go create that tool when there's one available. We're just going to leverage off of it and bring it into the project. So now you can bring in other expenses besides time. There's a chat there.
Any recommendations for an app with time project schedules without timesheets or billing?
Well, Q Factor works without them.
Yep.
You're just not getting your financial and T-sheet information, but everything else works just fine. You got your statuses, your task list. All the users in Q Factor don't rely on QuickBooks or T-sheets. They're QuickBooks users, so you can assign tasks and track them. And to that point, at some point, we will probably be building our own timesheet app to get it all into one place. But yes, to answer your question.
And a single user in Thomas's situation, if he was just a single user or even a couple of PMs.
Oh yeah,
situation,
yeah.
like,
You don't have to have the whole company on it. In fact, when we start out, we start with an implementation team rather than going for the full company. And then you add users as you see the value of adding a user. So you can start with one. And I had this happen with a client where they were really, you know, a little sensitive to the price, if you will. And when I showed them the task list feature and I said, do you want to assign a task to somebody on your team? And he said, yeah, Rosita needs to work on this CAD project. Okay. Oh, Rosita's not a user. We'll add her. He went from being concerned about the price to seeing the value of adding that new user was far and above. So yes, it can be one user, and we do have solar users use it. A gentleman in California who's been with us since Trent was. He's moonlighting, he's got his own side business, got a day job, and he loves Q Factor for keeping him organized, especially if he may not come back to projects until the next weekend. He knows where he was at when he comes back to it. So yes, 100, however many users.
How about just to show Thomas, go back to your projects and then and then projects itself. So click on projects. Yeah. And I was just seeing, there you go, like just from the proposal sent, you could even just like modified, right? Requested completion date. So maybe just modify that column. And show Thomas. Requested completion.
Oh, sorry.
All the way. One more, there you go.
So yeah, now you can sort.
There you go. And then you can kind of see the, you know, when things are due. If that would be something you would look for there as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where putting in those milestone dates really come in helpful. I mean,
Yep.
you can see this one's populated all the way across. And then, you know, our product is constantly evolving and developing, and we developed this based on feedback from surveyors who are using this. In fact, the task list feature that I showed you, that was a big client who wanted something like it. We didn't have it. They didn't say anything to us, but they did tell me they were shopping us around. And then they came back and said, we couldn't find anything better, but we found this feature we really want. Can you build it? Sure. What is it? Show us it. And we worked for 2 months with their head of operations, their senior project manager, and their chief financial person. And we built task lists working with them, design, build, test. They would give us their feedback, design, build, test, until we came out with that feature. So almost literally that was built by a survey company. We just did the work of getting it into an application.
Another one in the chat just showed up, which I'd never heard of. Uninet. I don't know how you saw it. Uninet.
Uninet.
Uninet. Yeah. Okay. Brainy. So I just pulled that up too. Yeah, I was gonna say I just pulled that up too. Looks good. Task list. Yeah, the task list. Task list feature has turned to be a really good tool moving forward, and it
has
creates that accountability for the office. I mean, we use tasks like Fred was just showing, task lists to from the research side, that way we know the field folders are ready to go for the crew. We use the task list on the crew side so that the crews don't leave the job site until they physically click the boxes, and can't just blindly do it either, because you can't change a job status until they go through and click those boxes. And so same thing like on the CAD side, they have to check their boxes, and then on the PM side. So it's created that accountability that and just making sure everything's done the way they're supposed to be done. So I do love the task list. That was a great feature.
All right. We're at the
Anybody
top
else?
or past the top of the hour, so
Yeah,
we
no,
can
it's
get
perfect.
more out of it.
Right, no worries. I'd highly recommend reaching out. Like Fred says, he'll do demos with you. Anyone on your staff, that kind of stuff. Take it back to your team. It's been a great tool for us over the years. You showed the project map, which is another beneficial tool, which was one of my selling points 5 years ago, just to be able to see where we've done work in the area. Just zoom in, I guess, kind of zoom in really quick so you can kind of maybe, where you got multiple pin drops, so you can kind
Well,
of.
I think I need to.
There you go. Just so you
better.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah, it's good on our side. Or at least good on my screen, but.
And then,
yeah.
So these place marks, you can set your statuses. So you have complete control over your statuses. Yep. And these place marks visually represent the status this project is in. And then when you click on it, this balloon comes up and takes you right to the project detail page. But it leaves your map intact, so you can come back to it if you want to look at a different project. And now you're right in on the project. You can see the map, Google Earth 3D. We tie you right into Google Earth online, and now you're right at the property and you can do all your 3D look at it. Does it need a 4-wheel drive because it's got a big incline, or can we go out there in flip-flops in a sedan and call it good because it's flat and sandy? And these are all things that surveyors said, hey, make it do this. Okay. And that's how we build it. And that's how we will continue to improve it and build it. We're working with 3 companies right now on a project for construction surveying services that's going to be almost a separate module because it's a totally different beast. And there aren't a lot of really good solutions for managing those, 10-year projects on an interstate. And so we're working with companies who that is the majority of their business, and we're building a tool for that. Working with another company where the project manager who found us is a document control expert in engineering. And she's become a real motivator for us to build what we've always intended but documents are I mean, those are what you guys finally produce and stamp and turn into the county or whoever. And that's where your liability and risk are. And she's helping us put together a system from the beginning of any kind of document that you need to complete for a project. We're going to have a separate flow just for the documents because they have a different life than the project. They're part of the project, but they've got a different life. You've got submissions, you've got changes, you've got updates, you've got revision control. That's where at Qualcomm, DoD projects, man, you talk about revision and documentation. Revision control is huge. And as you know, with engineering documents, just like if you're working off the wrong revision that your engineer supplied you, you're hosed.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can go back and show the engineer gave you the wrong one, but now that's just wasted time because you didn't know what the last revision was. So back to the document control. So we've got a lot of things in the works as we grow, and we totally engage our clients. And if there's anything in the system, I was talking with a couple of the Trent's Field guys, and I said, if there's anything where you're doing something, you go, it'd be nice if, that's what I want to hear. It would be nice if it did this, or it'd be better if it did this, or can you make it do this? That's how we keep building this.
Yep.
And that's how we make it better and better and better. It is a collective thing.
Perfect. Yeah, no, the document stuff is going to be great for just the mapping side of things. Like you say, all the different submittals and all the different revisions when it comes to final maps or parcel maps and that kind of stuff is where it's going to be really beneficial on the survey side for PMs as well. So.
Yep. And that's why from the get-go on our status chart, there's 4 statuses that used to be in here that were map submitted, map returned, map submitted again, map completed.
Yep. And I think that's probably one thing you could touch on is all of that you can create on the back end. Like us personally, we can create all those different statuses and those things where it's super easy. If you don't have something you want, just go create it, right? And maybe you can show them that really quick.
Yeah. I can show
how simple it is to, there you go, to just go in and create a quick status because you want to rename it to something else. So,
So I can just change this.
Yep.
And I update it. I'm going to add a new active status. So let's go ahead. Or I'm going to delete one.
There you go.
We'll delete that one. I want to change the order because I like things in a linear format, and this is now out of order, so I can change it. And then I can add a new status. Come down to the bottom here. Woohoo, CalDOT.
Whoa.
And I can now change the place mark color. So I'll just make it a red paddle with a C for CalDOT. And now I've added a new status. One of the areas we recommend multiple statuses is when you lose when an RFP, a request for proposal, gets canceled, you should stay on top of the proposals and make sure that what's in your queue is live, is an active, true proposal. And following up is huge on your proposals. And if you get either no feedback, then it's lost by attrition. Get it out of the pipeline, lost by attrition. And it can be resurrected if they call back, which they tend to do. They'll call back 6 months later and say, now I need it yesterday. Can you do it? Sure, for an expedite fee. Let me dust off our proposal. See, we'll use 100% multiply, but now it's off, it's gone, it's out of your mind. They call, you bring it right back in.
Yep. Change.
You could lose because somebody outbid you. You could lose because they canceled the project. Okay, that's good to know that that's why we lost it. And the idea is over time, you start to see why you aren't closing. If you're closing 40%, why aren't you closing the 60? You put the time and effort into it. So over time, you can start increasing your close rate while also being more discerning of what proposals you write. I've worked for companies that thought they had a cash cow service. Well, what they really had was 3 other services that were huge cash cows that were overriding the losses and what they thought was cash cow. And when you factored out the losses, they suddenly became way more profitable. But in their minds, that was a service that made them money because we're profitable at the end of the month.
Hmm.
Well, it was bringing down their margin. And so analyzing the business that way, I mean, now we're getting out of just surveying, now we're getting into analyzing the business processes. And when I worked at Qualcomm, we were not satisfied with a 1% out rate on our manufacturing line. So we had a 99% success rate that came off the line, and they were not satisfied with it. And the amount of money and time and effort we would go through to squeeze out another 0.1% was significant. And so these types of systems give you the ability to start turning the dials and squeezing out more margin from your company and its efficiency. You can't hire more people all the time. That does not solve problems necessarily. More money from the bank's not going to solve your problems necessarily. So you've got to work with the team that you have, with the projects that you have, and become more efficient at doing them. And that's how you start dialing in your margin and cut through all this being so busy you can't get to things.
Kevin in the chat says he just booked a meeting to discuss. So
I saw that, Kevin. Cool.
there you go.
Thank you.
It's a great way to end that one.
Yeah.
Anybody have any more questions or comments? Yeah.
Hey, George. Thank you, George. You've always got great input, George. I appreciate your contribution.
He does.
Go Mustangs, Cal Poly.
There you go. That's awesome.
It's only taken me 50 years to observe what's actually going on.
Mm-hmm.
And all this technology is way above my head most of the time, but you know what? I'm sure not afraid to try and take advantage of it.
Exactly.
And that's huge. I mean, yeah, that's huge.
Cool. Good stuff.
All right. Well, thanks again, Trent.
Yeah, no, thank you, Fred. I love it. Off next week for Memorial Day, and then we're kind of only going to run like one session each for like June, July, and August. Just so everybody knows, summer vacations and everything. Just takes a toll on the viewership and the participation. So the next one will be June 19th, just so everybody knows. So have a good week.
Topic?
That one's going to be at the moment, hopefully all goes well, but Steve Parrish, we're going to be doing BLM parenthetical calculations. So it's a topic that we really need some more good information online for. So that'll be a fun one. But
thanks, Fred. Thanks, Trent.
Yeah, of course. Have a good week. Have a good Memorial Day.
Thanks, Rob.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Have a good night.